Hey there, listeners. Welcome to Shit That Goes On in Our Heads, the podcast where we normalize conversations around mental health.
That's right. I'm Dirty Skittles, and alongside my amazing co-host, G-Rex, we are here to share stories and tips from our incredible guests.
Each episode, we deep dive into struggles and triumphs of mental health, offering practical advice and heartfelt support.
Because no one should feel alone in their journey. Join us as we break the stigma and build a community of understanding and compassion.
Tune in and let's start talking about the shit that goes on in our heads. Three, two, one. Welcome back to another episode of Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. I'm G-Rex with my amazing co-host, Dirty Skittles. And today we have an awesome guest, Amy. Welcome, Amy. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! Welcome, Amy.
Thank you.
You're excited to be here? Oh.
I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, yay. That's awesome. I have to tell our listeners about your fuzzy pink microphone cover that I cannot stop staring at. I just want to rub my face on it. I want to nuzzle up to it. It looks
Amazon. That's all it is. Yeah.
Okay. Now I know where to go.
Bizzle's going to love that. If you get one, I'm just saying.
Oh, it's blurred out, but he got me this little pop filter thingy to put on the mic, but it's not nearly as cool as what you have going on there. So what are we going to talk about today, Amy?
Well, I call myself mental health warrior and a neurospicy mama because I've got some mental health conditions like bipolar, anxiety, ADHD, and my daughter is on the spectrum and has anxiety and ADHD as well. That's where the neurospicy mama comes from. We're both neurospicy. So I have a podcast like you guys, and well, not like yours. Your guys, you guys are doing amazing.
Oh,
no. You guys have a lot more fun. Mine's a little more serious, but I'm just trying to get out there and spread the word that it's okay to have a mental health diagnosis or mental health issues and still live a fulfilling life.
Yeah. When did your journey of discovering your mental health issues start for you?
Well, I've always struggled, since I was little. I was abused as a child by a neighbor and started doing things like scratching up my dad's car with, a fork and that kind of thing, and started getting into trouble. And that was at age 4 or 5. And by the time I was a teenager, I was just angry. And by the time I was in college, when I was 18, I was diagnosed with recurrent depression. And so I thought that's what it was because I kept getting depressed. But come to find out, when I got a little older, I was in my 30s, I went to the doctor, the psychiatrist actually, and said, hey, I am screaming at my son for no reason. I'm so angry. And I don't know how to stop. And I'm not being a good mom. And so they said that's when they figured out that, you have bipolar disorder, not recurrent depression. So they changed my meds, and that made a world of difference. It doesn't make everything perfect, but it makes it manageable.
So for somebody who has no experience in that, I know what it's like to... for other reasons, I know what it's like to sort of be so angry all the time.
Yeah.
And I know for me, where I can kind of relate, maybe I'm trying to find some similarity or common ground, is for me, when I was that way, I almost justified it, or not justified it. I had a reason to be angry. I didn't know what it was, but I had this reason, right? And so I would just miserable all the fucking time. For me, it took therapy. And I remember feeling this weight off my chest. For you, I'm curious, when the meds changed, you're saying it made a world of difference. How could you tell the difference? In what way did it show up that it was different?
Well, they had me on meds for depression. I was actually on Prozac, and come to find out later that actually can make you manic, which anger is part of mania. And so when I got on the right meds, I felt more relaxed. And I didn't have that anxious thing where my son would say something to me and I would just make me tighten up and, be like, oh my God, be quiet. That kind of thing where everything bothered me, every noise, everything. So I just was able to let down and relax.
Yeah. How did that feel for the first time? Be like, finally?
Amazing.
Like, is this what it's like?
Yeah. I thought, too bad I went so long. Yeah.
And you had started taking meds when you were a kid. So when you started that as an adult and working with your kids, I'm sure it was life-changing, right? Like,
yeah,
it made all the difference in the world for you, just not only mentally, but probably physically, because being angry and uptight and tense like that all the time, like really like messes up with your physical well-being also.
Right. Right. And I was either like that or I was majorly depressed and couldn't get out of bed and was crying over nothing. I would call my dad and just fall apart on the phone. And he would say, oh my God, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I'd be like, I'm fine. And I don't know what's wrong. I just can't quit crying and I am unhappy. So it was a lot of confusion over why I felt that way. So getting a label, I know people don't like labels, but getting a label gave me some clarity and some reason for why I had been going through what I've been going through.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's almost like it's a starting point. If you can at least know where you're starting from and try that, right? Or whatever that path looks like to getting better or to treating it every day. But at least having somewhere to start, I feel like would be like a weight lifted off your shoulders. Like, oh, finally, like there's a direction that we can go into and see if that works and, adjust if not. Yeah. Did you have to make any adjustments to meds? Like once they switched you over, was there like any?
Yeah, I've been on many different meds over the years. I'm 53 now. And so I've tried just about everything because one of the bad things about medication and bipolar disorder is you can be on the right med and it goes well for 6 months, a year, 2 years. And then all of a sudden, maybe your chemistry changes or you get hormonal with menopause. I had some changes and I had to change up all my meds. Yeah. So that takes some time and is not pleasant.
Yeah. How do you feel like, shit, here we go again? Or are you like better? I don't know. Are you handling it better?
Again, this sucks, but I also do handle it better because it's like, I know now that there will be an end to the misery, that I will be able to come out and see the beautiful sunny day again. When in the past, I would just be so down in the depths of despair. I've tried to take my own life before. I didn't see any way out. And now I know when I'm depressed that it's going to get better.
Oh my God.
Right. Because now you have like tips and tricks and tools to kind of help you get to that next day, right? Or that in some cases, it's just the next minute or the next hour. I love that you can recognize that now. When you were finding out, like maybe the first or second time that your meds weren't working, were you in a manic state or were you at the other spectrum of that?
I was at the other spectrum. I was incredibly depressed. And one of the things about coming off of things like antipsychotics and different meds that they use for bipolar disorder is they can really mess with your mind. I remember they took me off a med too fast one time about 10 years ago. And I literally started seeing things like I saw a monster on the wall and I don't normally do that. So I knew something wrong. I had to go back to my psychiatrist and go, wait a minute, put me back on that med and then we'll wean off it slower or something because this is scary.
Wow. Good for you, though, for being able to go back and speak and advocate for yourself. Because I probably would not find that very easy to do. Like, I'd be like, oh, no, it's fine. It's going to be great. But I think it's important to be able to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It was embarrassing. It's embarrassing to go and tell somebody you saw a monster in the wall. I mean, you're just like, it makes no sense. and you don't want to be considered crazy in quotation marks. So yeah, it was hard to admit to, but it got me the treatment that I needed.
Yeah. You said something a minute ago. Sorry, Rex.
No, go ahead. I'll wait.
I know. It's all the Red Bull, but just like, I got all these ideas. You said something a minute ago that I just want to like kind of go back to because like I'm hearing it again, which is when I asked like, was it like, shit, here we go again because the meds are switching up. You're having to deal with all of that. And you said no, because you knew that it was happy and studying on the other side. Like you knew that it's better once you get through this. And I just wanted to say like, I think that's huge, especially for our listeners, because not everybody knows that yet.
Right.
And so when you haven't gotten to see the sun or the shiny day on the other side, it's hard to know that it exists. So hearing it from somebody who's already seen it, like you and G-Rex, both of you, I think is really important to.
Yeah, I think that's why I do what I do is I want people out there that are in that spot where they don't feel like it's going to get any better to know that this will pass.
Yeah. And same for me. But, a lot like you, Amy, I had to put a lot of work in, right? I've done 20 months worth of work to get to the other side. But like, I'm a billion times happier now than I have been in 20 years. Right. Yeah. And I look forward to the next day and the next minute and the next hour. Some days are hard, but, at least now I know what my triggers are and I have better tools to deal with that. But I'm interested to find out from you, like, did you ever feel embarrassed or ashamed that you had a mental illness or afraid to share that with anybody?
Oh, definitely. I didn't tell anybody except for my parents. And my parents were like, bipolar disorder. No, you don't have bipolar disorder because they just didn't like the label. They came around later and were like, okay, yeah, I see it. That made it even worse because then I was like, oh, my parents don't even believe it. So I'm not going to tell anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I finally, after years, told my two best friends and they were very accepting and like, yeah, we knew something was wrong. And then it wasn't until I was in my 50s, so just this last year, that I decided to tell everybody. And it was really scary. I actually had a night where I was asleep and I woke up and sat up straight out of dead sleep and just thought, oh my God, what the hell have I done? Really? And started thinking about my family and was that going to embarrass them and that kind of thing. And I ended up waiting and calling my mom in the morning and saying, I'm so sorry. Have I embarrassed you? And she's like, no, you're fine. You're just being you. So it was scary, but I've only had one hater and it was kind of funny. So
we have one hater, but I'm not going to say their comment out loud, but I did laugh at it. But also I was like, fuck you, dude.
Right.
I was convinced it was a dude. Might not have been a dude, but fuck it. So that's interesting. So I thought when you said you sat up out of bed, I thought you were going to say like, oh, it was so freeing. But you said the opposite where you were like, holy shit, what have I done?
Yeah.
And then hearing your mom say, no, you're fine. Was that like, oh, okay, that's what you needed to hear? Or did you still have to work through being okay with letting everybody know?
I still had to work through that. It was this anxiety, like my chest just felt so heavy, like, oh my God, I can't take back what I just put on social media. And now my boss at work knows and my coworkers know and everything like that. But everybody has been so supportive.
That's really good.
And don't you think it's because people realize now is the time that we start talking about this and not keeping it behind closed doors, and that we let people know it's okay to talk about your mental, what you're going through mentally?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally think we are in a new time where people are freer to talk about mental health issues. I'm not the only one out here that calls myself a mental health warrior. I didn't make that up. There's several out there and I'm so happy every time I run into someone. When I found your guys' show, I was just so thrilled. So it's like, I'm not alone.
Right. We're all in this together, guys.
We are.
Yeah.
So as a parent, having children who are also, you said you have a daughter that's on the spectrum.
Yes.
How has that been for you to navigate through your own issues, but also showing up as a parent?
That is a wonderful question. My daughter and I used to butt heads like crazy. And I didn't understand. I thought she was autistic when she was little. And I took her to a children's hospital to get diagnosed. And they said she has all the signs and symptoms, but she makes eye contact and she's too social, which later now we know that girls are more social and make eye contact more. It's called masking.
Mm.
And so later she wasn't diagnosed until she was 12. And I feel so bad for not trusting my gut and believing that all these years, because people kept telling me you're being too easy on her. You just need to discipline her more. But the more I tried to discipline her and the harder I came down on her, the more she acted out. I mean, I have holes, like huge holes in my walls that I need to get fixed from a couple years ago that I just haven't been able to afford to fix yet. But they are from when she was really upset and I did not handle it well. And that spiraled her out of control. So once she was diagnosed and we both went through counseling and therapy together, oh my God, she is like a different child. And I love spending time with her. She's so fun. And yeah, it's a different environment now at my house.
Yeah, I like that you went through it together.
Yeah.
Because that's got to be difficult, right? Like as a parent, I think the expectation is that you know all the answers, or at least you're making an attempt to know the answers. And when that's not the case, it's like, how do you adjust? And I'm happy to hear that, like, you were like, hey, we're doing this together. Like, we're going to figure our own shit out as individuals. How are we going to work together as a team?
Right.
Parent that way. Like, that's how it should be.
I'm also a big reader. So I read when she finally did get her diagnosis, I read everything out there on girls with autism and masking and parenting and all of that, and just changed the way I parented.
And how did that affect her in school? Did you ever have to intervene in any type of anything that happened at school for her?
She hasn't had any violent outbursts there, but she has had she went from a grade school where even though she wasn't diagnosed, they knew something was up and they worked with her. She had a counselor all through grade school, and they would let her have fidget spinners and things in class. And if she got really upset, because she would, when she was little in grade school, like even in 5th, 6th grade, she would get distracted or upset and she would have to leave the room or she would feel like she was just going to lose it. And so they had another classroom and a teacher for her to go to if that happened. So they were wonderful. But when she went to the middle school, oh my gosh, we went to 7 different classes that she had to switch between and 7 different teachers and learning styles, and everything was crazy. So middle school was hell. And her grades went from A's to F's, and it was awful. She starts as a freshman next year, and I keep hoping that it's going to be better next year.
That's got to be rough. That has to be so hard. Because I'm the helicopter mom, right? Like, and as much, don't you laugh at me, G-Rex. As much as I want to protect my son, I don't think I would make the best decision in that situation. I think I would probably be like, okay, that's fine. Come home and I'll do it. I'll do it all. I'll make sure you're great and you're perfect and you're fine and everything's going to be great. But I don't think that everybody can do that. And I think that navigating through the challenge is probably better than just taking it on yourself. Oh, it's going to be fine.
Right. Well, we lived through COVID where she had to do school at home, and she hates Zoom. She can't focus on it and she will spin in her chair. The teacher had to call me and go, can you please get her a chair that doesn't spin? She was just like not sitting there and could not pay attention. And she still to this day hates to get on Zoom. So homeschooling, because I'm not an educator, homeschooling was never an option.
Yeah, I'm not an educator either. That's why I think I would have made the bad decision. It's fine, I got it. And then wouldn't have had it.
Yeah, I have the most respect for teachers.
Yeah. The patience of a saint.
Patience of a saint. But, this makes me think of, we had a guest on recently, Lori Moser, and she's out of Canada, and she has a Facebook group for moms and teens with mental issues. And a huge advocate and just a lovely lady. And you really should check her out. Her Instagram handle is staying active. Oh, please. It is Staying Active Lori, and she is an amazing soul and such a great resource for parents out there, right? Because sometimes you guys you just don't know where to turn, and medications are changing every day and different modalities for school. I can only imagine that school was horrid because educators now just don't have the tools that they need to help students. And, they're just trying to make it from, day one to day two. And at the same time, your daughter and other kids are just trying to get through school. They're just trying to learn, but their minds don't stop and your hands have to be busy. And, I love the fact that you really stood by your daughter and helped her out as much as you could with the tools you had available.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm speaking of tools, I've talked a lot about medication, but my daughter and I both have been through individual and therapy together. And I do a lot of things to work on myself and personal development. So I don't want anybody to walk away from this thinking medication is the one end all be all and it'll fix everything, because it doesn't.
Yeah, that's huge to mention, because I would imagine it's every day. Just like my therapy and the tools that I had to learn, it's every day. There's not a button or a switch that just gets flipped and, oh, great, everything's fine.
Right.
It takes the work every day.
There is a button. I want it.
Do you have any plan in place? So if it is difficult transitioning into high school for her, is there anything that you maybe learned from the last time?
Well, she has a 504 plan. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like, do you know what an IEP is?
No.
An IEP is called an individualized education plan. And they use that for kiddos like her or other diagnoses that make it difficult for them to learn at school. And they have to do accommodations and different modifications to help them. So she has a 504 in place, and we meet a couple times a year to revise it and say, okay, this is working and this isn't. And that's just when we meet. I call them all the time and go, why is her grade this way? She's what they call 2E. Have you heard of that?
No.
She's twice exceptional. It means that she is gifted. So she's very bright, even though she's on the spectrum. So she is getting Fs when she could be getting As. So that's really frustrating for her and I.
Do you know, is there a cause for it or?
Yeah, there's different reasons. She was doing really well in math. And then her math teacher had to go on maternity leave, and they got a substitute teacher that taught in a totally different manner. And she did not gel with that. So there went her math grade. She also, because of the ADHD, has a horrible time organizing her paperwork and getting her stuff turned in on time. And she's like her mom, we're both perfectionists. And so if she can't finish the whole assignment, then she doesn't turn it in. And I'm like, okay, we've talked now several times this summer about even if you only fill out half of it, turning in half of it is more points than none of it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different reasons.
So true. So I have a question about the 504 plan. How did you know that it was even available for your daughter?
Well, that's a good question. I'm a social worker. Okay. So I work with a lot of members that have autism and other intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so I've been to their 504 and IEP meetings and things like that. So I knew that help was out there.
That's awesome. Are there 504 plans in all school districts, or is it just in your location? The only reason I'm asking is that we might have a listener that has a child that, needs extra help or extra attention, and how they can go about that process.
Yeah, definitely. It's in all states in the United States. It's just not effective at private schools. So it has to be a public school, and then they're mandated to follow those guidelines. The schools don't always want to because sometimes it costs them extra time, it costs them extra money to implement different things. So they're not always real helpful. You have to be kind of an advocate for your kid, and you have to go to the counselor for your child at the school and say, this is not working, and I think she needs a 504 or an IEP. And then they ask you for records from the psychiatrist and their primary care physician, and that starts the whole process.
Wow.
When did like just getting your daughter the help she needed start? Like, how old was she?
The summer before kindergarten, we started.
Wow.
Yeah.
I knew something was wrong when she was little, and the daycare was calling me saying, she won't settle down. She's on the top of tables. She's turning tables over. She's running around the room like crazy, and they got to a point where they were about ready to kick her out if I didn't get her some help. So I knew there was a problem when she was really young.
And how has she handled that, do you think, from, seeing specialists, trying to figure out what help she needed from that early on in her life to where she is now?
I think once I was on board and really knew what was going on and got myself together, she's done a 180 and just been incredible. And I want to brag on her a second. She's a theater buff. And so she actually just played, what's her name? Not Medusa, in The Little Mermaid.
Oh,
so
my
I
God.
can't remember her name. I can see her in
and
my
you know
head.
what? Had you not said Medusa, I think I would have gotten it. You're talking about she's the octopus, right?
Yes.
This is gonna bother me now.
I'm looking it up.
Thank you. But
I don't want to start singing the song. Otherwise, I would literally start singing.
She did so incredible that we have people coming up to us in town out to eat saying, oh my God, we saw her in the musical and she was amazing. So
G-Rex, come with a name.
Okay, I'm looking it up.
I'm like not going to be able to
Okay, it wasn't Melissa McCarthy.
Yes, well, Melissa McCarthy paid the character.
Yeah, she did it.
She was
Ursula. Yes. Okay, we can all sleep tonight.
Okay,
Ursula.
Google for the win. Okay.
Google arms. Ursula, that's awesome. Wow. Okay, cool. So she likes musicals. So she's not afraid to be on stage and in front of an audience.
No, she is very proud of who she is. That's one thing I think I did right is from the very get-go. I told both of my kids, I have a son and then I have her. And I've always told them, you are enough. You are, everything I dreamed of. You're the reason I exist. You're a good person, that kind of thing. So I'm very much into boosting them up. And I've always believed that I should be the safe place for them to come to because the world can get kind of dark. Yeah. So she's very confident in who she is. And when she got the final diagnosis of autism, I asked her how she felt about that. And she said, nothing changes. I'm still me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that about her.
Yeah.
Nothing changes. I am just me.
Yeah.
That's so cute. And your son, how is he on the spectrum at all? Or
No, he has ADHD. So he's still neurodiverse. My mouse drive. But he's grown. He's in his 30s and he's got 3 littles of his own and he's married. So I had my kids 18 years apart.
I was about to ask him, like, how was that, like the upbringing, like growing up together, having different needs? And
yeah, totally 2 different only children.
Yeah. That's the perfect way to put it. And like 2 different experiences for you, right? Raising between the 2.
Oh, yeah. And they're total opposites. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Do they like each other?
They tolerate each other.
Inquiring minds just wanted to know.
Yeah. He was not happy when he found out I was having a kid and he was 18 and in high school.
Really?
And so, yeah, he didn't like that. And then she's just very dominant and very who she is. And I think she rubs him the wrong way sometimes. So they love each other, but they don't always like each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I can get that. I don't think I got along with my brother until I went to college. I mean, we tolerated each other. We lived in the same house. We were pleasant, but we weren't like besties. You know what I mean?
Right.
We would find different ways to torment each other. That was how we bonded. No, I'm just kidding.
Your poor parents.
There's something that like I keep thinking about though, like listening to your story and just how you and your daughter sought treatment for yourselves as individuals and then like figuring out therapy together and all of that. And I started to like kind of relate it to, do you know that fucking book, like the five love languages or something?
Yeah, I've read that. I actually was in a class on it years ago.
I was thinking like, why don't they have that kind of a book for like mental health, right? Like we work on loving one another in relationships, but like we should be able to know the other person's triggers or how to effectively communicate with somebody based on all this stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think we're all products of how we were raised. Mm-hmm. And so my parents did better than their parents, and I hope I'm doing better than they did. And I hope my children are doing, I know my son is a much better parent than I was. He's an incredible dad. Mm-hmm. So, it's all about progress.
Yeah.
It really is, because for me, I mean, you guys are younger than I am, but, I was raised to not ever talk about mental health, ever.
Right.
Like, until I woke up on Christmas Day, 2022, and I was like, I fucking need to talk to somebody. Yeah. But I think the schools need to do a better job of, talking about self-love and self-care and boundaries. And so that people aren't waking up in their, 20s and 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, like, what the fuck just happened? Right? Like, I think as an education system, we need to get more resources out there and make them more available for people. And we need to talk about it more. We need to get the message out there that it's okay to talk about this. It is. Because if we know if something is going on, there's more tools available to us now to help people out.
Yeah, definitely.
And just checking yourself too, right? Like, don't be a dick.
Nobody needs to be a dick. So I have a couple of questions. Question number one. Why the oh? She said, oh. I'm like, it's not that bad, is it?
No.
Question number one. What has been the hardest lesson you've had to learn so far?
The hardest lesson? Probably that life was going to get better. I think that was the hardest lesson because, I remember I started having suicidal thoughts when I was a senior in high school. And that was when I had my first attempt. And there really were times where I didn't think there was any way out. And I thought I was a burden to everybody that loved me. And so I would be doing them a favor if I ended it. So coming through that has been the roughest part.
Yeah. What would you say to anybody listening who might have a similar thought?
That the mental illness lies to you, tells you that you're not loved, tells you that you're a burden, tells you that it's not going to get better. And you have to find help. You have to reach out and find someone who can bring you back.
100%. And for anybody that's listening, that's in crisis, call 988 because they can help you with it, get you through to that next day, that next minute, that next hour. I can attest to that. I'm alive today because of them.
Yeah. Next question. If you could go back, and this might tie into what we were just chatting about, but if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and give yourself a piece of advice, how old would you go back to? So how old are you? And what would you say?
This makes me want to cry, so I'm going to take a second. I would go back to when I was 4 or 5 and I got sexually abused. And I would tell myself that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't bring it on, and that I didn't have to live with that shame, that it was their shame, not mine.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to lighten up the mood just a tiny bit.
We're going to talk about owls or crows.
No, I'm not talking about.
Can we have a safe word so I don't cry? I'm like, I'm gonna suck it back in.
No, you're allowed to cry too. Hey, I've cried on a number of episodes. So, what is your favorite word, Amy?
My favorite word? Well, my word of the year, I'm going to go with that, is flow. Because I believe that everything I need is going to flow through me. It's going to come to me with ease. And everything I don't need is going to flow away.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. What is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. My least favorite behavior. My least favorite word is probably stupid.
It's such a good. I
want to know your least favorite behavior now.
Yeah.
Oh. Lying. I cannot stand lying. It drives me insane. I would rather you tell me the worst news possible than sugarcoat it and lie to me.
I'm literally working through this with my son. He's 6 and he'll lie about the dumbest shit. I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter how bad it is. Just tell me. And I'm like, trust me, you're going to be better off for it. Just tell me the truth. Because if I find out you're lying, pet peeve.
That's normal for kids.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's like, no, I didn't drink the chocolate milk. I'm like, well, it's in your hand and it's gone.
Oh yeah. My son, I took a shower one time when he was about 3 and he colored the whole entire living room wall in that 15 minutes. And when I came out and said, oh my gosh, what did you do? He said, it wasn't me, it was Fuzzy, our cat.
Did Fuzzy have a permanent marker in his paw?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I have one more question, and it's like kind of a two-parter. So what do you and your daughter do now for self-love?
Well, she's an artist, so she draws all day long. She is drawing anime characters, and she's incredible at it. Like, you cannot tell they're not from a professional. So that's how she centers herself. I myself, I do a lot of journaling, and I do a lot of guided meditation. I just find them on the podcast apps, and I listen to a lot of guided meditation.
Okay. And then what do you do for self-care?
I try to do things like I try to turn up the music. I used to be big into music. My first major in college was vocal performance. And I kind of lost track of that. And so now when I really need some self-care, I turn up the radio.
Any favorite artists?
Oh yeah, Dixie. Well, they're not called Dixie Chicks anymore. The Chicks. Yeah.
The Chicks. Nice.
The Chicks. I like that. Amy, are there any like other tips and tricks that you could give to like listeners out there that are kind of like just finding out that they've been diagnosed or their child's being diagnosed, like some things that they can do for themselves so if they don't harbor like ill will or don't get so like wrapped up in the diagnosis?
Right. I think it's important to remember that you're not alone and reach out to other groups, whether it's through Facebook or groups in person at local hospitals, but find other people that are going through what you're going through and talk with them. And then you don't feel so alone and you realize that you're not weird or crazy. You just have this diagnosis that makes some things harder. But it's definitely lonely if you think you're the only one with that. So I would say seek out others.
I love this. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Where can our listeners find you? You mentioned you had a podcast. What's your podcast title?
It's called Advancing with Amy, Mental Health Warrior and Neurospicy Mama. And I have a website, advancingwithamy.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram under Advancing with Amy.
I love this. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
I'm enlightened. I learned something new today.
I know.
I'm so glad. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, we did too. I loved it. It was awesome.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm G-Rex.
And I'm Dirty Skittles.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'd love to listen to your feedback.
We can't do this without you guys. It's okay to be not okay. Just make sure you're talking to someone.